Welcome to Be With Champions. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today I just have a wonderful chat with one of the greatest endurance coaches in the world, Dan Lorang. And Dan is just incredibly forthcoming in this conversation. He goes into detail about how he approaches the year for each of his athletes and how they start with the VO2 type work, VO2 max work at the beginning, then they move into strength endurance, and then they go into race specific. And after that race, they'll cycle back through all of that again several times throughout the year, and how he doesn't use races for training. If they go to race, they go to win, and they go to prepare for that race specifically to win. And in this conversation, he really goes into great detail about triathlon versus cycling and the different cultures and how they've been able to integrate together. His relationships with both Jan Frodeno and Haug, who won the 2019 World Championships in Kona last year. And just so many wonderful takeaways. I really appreciate him coming on and just sharing so much wealth of knowledge that he has. A few things before we get going. If you want to go to bennettendurance.com/media, there you can find the timestamps, the show notes. You can find the sponsors' coupon codes and links to look up the guest, Dan, and how you can follow him. Please subscribe if you're enjoying the show. It really helped me out. And please share it if you get the chance. That would also help me grow this show, and that would be fantastic. And also keep the feedback coming, guys. I really, really appreciate that. If that's either on social media, Instagram, I'm Greg Bennett World. On Twitter, I'm Greg Bennett 1. If you want to give me feedback on iTunes, that's also wonderful. I just can't respond to you there, but I do appreciate it. And I am listening, so please keep it coming. Enjoy this one. I really did. Before we start, I've got to give a quick shout out to the brands that make this show possible. The only brands I'm working with are brands that provide products that I use daily and truly believe in. These products support my immunity, they help improve my recovery and my focus. First up, my friends at Athletic Greens. I love this company and I love their all-in-one daily drink. It's become a part of my morning routine. I'm heavily focused on supporting my immunity and boosting my energy and helping my gut health, but I want to do it naturally. And I found that support with Athletic Greens, a whole food sourced green drink that tastes great and there's no hassle. It's delivered straight to your door. And it's a highly absorbable powder that takes seconds to mix with water, so there's no clumpiness to deal with. I can't believe a green drink sourced from whole foods can actually taste so good. Personally, I truly love it. It's developed from a complex blend of 75 vitamins and minerals. It's packed with adaptogens for recovery, probiotics and digestive enzymes for gut health, and vitamin C and zinc citrate for immune support. So Athletic Greens is designed to help fill the nutritional gaps in your diet. And there's a great offer going on now for you to give it a try. Simply go to athleticgreens.com/Greg to claim our special offer of 20 free daily travel packets with your first order. $79 added value. And get Athletic Greens delivered straight to your door. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. This show is also brought to you by my friends at HighPerformance. Some of these products I've been using for almost a decade. Makers of the award-winning HyperVolt, the world's most powerful percussion massage device featuring quiet glide technology. HighPerformance is a wellness tech company that makes devices designed to help you move better. From handheld massage devices to vibrating foam rollers, thermal technology, and the Normatec compression systems, HighPerformance helps you warm up faster, recover quicker, and simply move better. Used in professional training rooms throughout the NBA, the NFL, MLB, the MLS, Ironman, and other professional organizations for well over a decade. Designed to help improve circulation, flexibility, and relieve tension. Get $50 off all percussion devices now, no code needed, and get an additional 10% off with code GREG10 at hyperice.com. That's hyperice.com, HYPERICE.com, and use code GREG10 for 10% off. All right, today's guest is one of the world's greatest endurance coaches. He's the first coach in history to coach a men's and a women's Ironman World Champion. And what's more, they both won on the same day on October 12th, 2019. Those athletes were none other than Jan Frodeno, who broke the course record on the way to winning his third Ironman World Championship title, and Haug, winning in the third fastest time ever on the Big Island of Hawaii and improving upon her third the previous year. He's also the high-performance coach and the head of innovation for the Bora Hansgrohe professional cycling team. I'm delighted to have on the show one of the great minds of high-performance sport, Mr. Dan Lorang. Welcome. And thanks for joining me on Be With Champions, mate. How are you?
Yeah, hello, Greg. Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm fine. Thank you very much. Just before the next races in cycling, they start again. We had now the last races in this week, and we're looking forward to what is coming. Also in triathlon, looking forward to the next weeks and months, and hopefully see the guys at the start line again.
I know it's been a bit of this waiting game, hasn't it? Where we've just been in this waiting room waiting to get going again. And I saw on your Instagram that your cycling team, Bora Hansgrohe, have already started off with a bang. They've already had a couple of big wins, right?
Yeah, we just today was the last day of the Zibio tour. It's a smaller race, but always when you go to race, you first have to win it and also have to show that you come good out of this break. And today we win 2 stages, so a time trial and the final stage and the overall win. So it was nice to see that the guys are on fire, are ready for the big runs.
And are you with them? Where are you at the moment? Do you travel with the team?
No, so in general, at the moment I'm at home. I'm living in Germany in the mountains with my family. And in general, I travel with the team when we are going to training camps. We did a bigger camp some weeks ago in altitude in Austria. And I'm generally just going then to the Tour de France, so for the whole 3 weeks to support there the main captains. But my main job is really the focus on training camps, and also in the background about the performance, the logistics there, the innovations to education of the coaches and all this stuff. So where it's better not always to be on the race, because to be honest, when you are at the race, you are a little bit limited in time with all the other stuff. And at the race, we have our sports director who have a lot of experience, and they know what to do. So I'm fine with this.
Yeah, because I was actually curious about that title, high performance coach. I understand. When head of innovation, what kind of things are you coming up with, or what are they asking of you when you say head of innovation for a professional cycling team?
Yeah, it's from 2 ways. So one way is that in general, companies contact you or people contact you with something new, something they want to invent or they have invented, or a new product, and this comes out to my table, and then I have to take a decision and say, okay, we want to go a step forward. We want to continue the chat, the contact. It makes sense. It makes sense to make this investment. And on the other side, it's also my job to look myself for what is new. Where can we be one step in front of the other guys? Or should we do our own innovations? Should we do our own, for example, our own testing about products? That's my role, to bring new stuff to the team, to make an evaluation, the first evaluation, and then contact also the specialists in our team. We have doctors, physiotherapists, we have nutritionists, we have other coaches there. So my main role is just to see, okay, if this idea should enter the whole circle or not. And that's what I really like, because it's also about looking at studies and offering to my colleagues all the new studies that are related to our sports, or that can bring us some new input. And like this, you also stay always on the ahead of the game. So that's for me a really, really important point.
Can you share with us some of the things that you've found since this role has started? What have you come up with?
Yeah, for example, what we did is there was a lot of talking about this ketone stuff in the last weeks and last years. And so we finally did our own studies and find out how and if we should use it and how we should use it, and also a little bit bring some clarity in this mystics. And so that's for us important. I cannot share everything here, because we invest there quite a lot of research, and but that was, for example, one topic. Or another topic about the body core temperature. We know all that there are some pills on the market that you can measure it with which you can measure your body temperature, but to have some really live measurements and to see what is going on there and to react on this. It's also a project that I support and that we develop together with the company. And or another one is something on the neuroscience based, so which effects could have some neurostimulation to your recovery, to your performance, to the task that you are doing. So these are just 3 of the fields that what I try together with scientists, with companies, be a step ahead. And also in the terms of performance diagnostic, there we developed our own tool now to make performance diagnostic in the field. So in the past years, we used some software, but now we can just use our own system, our own database to predict, or better to understand more the metabolism of the athletes.
I love all of that. And I can understand, I think that role would be absolutely fascinating, because it's like you're in a position where you're able to reach out, like you said, to all these different companies, but they're coming to you and throwing ideas. And I guess it's a matter of sort of deciphering, what's a hack and what really works. I'm fascinated to get, your more thoughts on the ketones. And I get that, you're trying to keep that a little bit hush hush, but it's a fascinating topic in its own right of, especially these extreme endurance sports like the tours and in cycling or the Ironman type racing and the effects of ketones. And I was coaching an athlete a couple of years ago, and he had the resources to be able to use it. And we experimented a lot with that, with his training. And it was a very expensive product to be using for anybody that's looking into it. I think it was like $25 for each little hit. And of this, I've forgotten the brand that he was using, but anyway, it's a fascinating area in terms of nutrition and getting the body into ketosis for energy. And have you been able to experiment with that with particular athletes? Like if you've got a training squad of, how many are in your team, in the cycling team? 25?
27. We have 27 riders. Yeah.
And do you pick certain athletes that are going to be experimented on, or how do you actually come up with, how this is going to work on a team concept?
That depends a little bit. If we have products that we test that are not, so that has any kind of uncertain, danger is the wrong word, but could have an effect on the health of the athlete. Like, for example, if we measure temperature of somebody, it has no big impact, so there's no risk. This is something we test for sure with our athletes. And perhaps also from your experience with athletes, you have athletes who are really interested in technology, who are interested in testing new things. And these are the guys that we use. Sometimes these are not our main captains from the races, but these are guys who are interested in the science, interested in giving feedback, in testing some new gears. And that is important, because it makes no sense to give a tool to somebody who just throw it away when it's not working at the first moment, because you need to invest a little bit of time. And we know our athletes, and some of them are really appreciate to be part of the kind of testing, and some of them say, hey, tell me the result after, and if it works, then we can work together. But otherwise, I don't want to be bored. I don't want to be implemented in it, and I respect it. I think it's okay for me, and that's why it's always a nice working, because you never say to an athlete you have to use this, but it's always like, okay, are you interested in, and that could be the benefit, and then it's a nice working. You have a really good workflow, and everybody is interested in the results, and they ask and they want to see the data. So I like that kind of work.
I imagine coming from, and I want to get into your past and everything else, but before I do, I imagine coming from triathlon, which tends to be a sport where we put up our hands and say, yes, please, let's give all these new things a go. I mean, you go back to the 80s and disc wheels and clipless pedals and aero bars, and triathletes were just all over it from day one. It was like, okay, we must have all of this stuff. And the innovations that keep coming, triathletes tend to be, okay, whatever it costs, I want to try and buy myself from free speed. Has that kind of coming from triathlon, have the cycling world been as adaptive of that kind of a mindset, or have they been a little bit like, whoa, this is all kind of cryptic? And, what is the difference in cultures between triathletes and cyclists like that?
So my first real engagement in cycling is around 10 or 11 years ago, when I was in the Cervelo test team. There I worked as a sports scientist, really, really in the background, just looking at some data and giving studies and making performance diagnostic. There the culture was, it was the first time that I felt, oh yeah, okay, here they are interested in science, because I always heard, cycling is traditionally, and they don't want to change, and they have their own methods, and you have some old guys in it who knows how to do it. So that's what you heard as a young scientist. But I had there the feeling, oh, something is happening. And then you have squads like HTC at these times, where you saw, they doing a little bit more than just riding the bike. And there I really mean, not to misunderstand me, I really mean the allowed science, not the doping stuff, not this one, but they really looked at data, the performance testing, and how could you do this. And they have scientists in their teams. And now when I came to Bora Hansgrohe, it was also a little bit of a risk for our general manager to take one coach who was just 1 year involved in cycling, who comes from triathlon, but that was exactly what he wanted. He wanted to get some knowledge from different sports, somebody who's looking a little bit in different areas. And it took me 1 year to get the confidence of everybody, because you started as a triathlon coach, and in my first year I just was a coach, so one of the others, and coached my 9 athletes. And then we were quite successful. They developed well, and you get more and more a good reputation about what you are doing. And then it's easier. Then you can also present new stuff. You can try to convince the team to buy this and to invest money. And it brought me now to the point that I have a really big trust of my general manager, who, when I present something to him, and when I can really show him the difference that could make the difference, he just trusts, and it's a nice feeling. It's also when we're recruiting new riders, that's also a part of my job, together with a colleague, to look at talents, make the talent scouting, recruiting process. And so it's something that developed over the last 4 years, that also the team was so the general manager was always open to this new stuff, what he showed already by choosing these people that he brought into the team, like me in person, like a triathlon coach. And that's why, if your general manager, so if your head of an organization is already open-minded, then it's easier. Then everybody knows, okay, we have to think differently, and we have to not just making the stuff that we did the last 50 years, but we have to find new solutions. If there is something to find, don't get me wrong. I really, really believe, and I heard it also in one other of your podcasts, I really believe in the basics. So, and that is also my role, to get all that stuff away from the athletes and just saying, hey, guys, first of all, focusing on the basics, on good training, recovery, nutrition, on commitment. And then we're talking about the extras. But if you don't do the basics right, then we don't have to talk about the extras. It makes just no sense. And that is also my role a little bit to see, okay, this guy, he's making good nutrition. He's training well. He's completely 100% committed to his program. Perhaps we could give him, because we mentioned it, some cadence for the race. But not if I see, okay, his nutrition is bad and he just doing 80% of his training, or his motivation is not the best. So then we also don't need to give something extra. So that's how we are working. We have a toolbox, but we just use them correlating also with the development of the personality of this athlete. So the further he is, the more he gets also from this technology stuff, and not a young rider gets already all the technology that we have. I think that makes no sense.
Oh, that's really well put. And I think you're referring, there's been a few times I've spoken to, like you said, on this podcast. And, I think we all often get hung up on the 1%, the marginal gains that came out of the Sky team, the whole, and it's kind of like, well, whoa. That's, let's get the 99% done right first, like you said, and then we can add, and you can be adding that 1% throughout, but it's kind of like, let's make sure we're focusing on doing the work, turning up, being consistent, staying healthy, getting the right amount of sleep, eating right, doing all of these things right. And then, okay, let's discuss ketones and blah, 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 blah. And there's a million of those things we can do. Now, I want to just step back real quick, and not too far right now, because 2019, that having Jan Frodeno and Haug winning on the same day. And like I said in the introduction, I don't believe there's been another coach that's had a man and a woman Ironman World Champion on the same day. What I loved about that is, okay, you could say Jan Frodeno is one of the all-time great athletes, and maybe, Dan Lorang got lucky to have him in his stable and blah, 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 and Jan was always going to win. There's that kind of an argument you could say. But then you've come along and gone, well, hang on. If you think that was a fluke, here you go, Annie Haug. And Annie, in her own right, is one of a great ITU athlete, but we're not talking Olympic gold. She's been there or thereabouts, phenomenal athlete. And then you've transitioned her in a fairly short 2-year span, I think, to become Ironman World Champion with an 8-hour, 40-minute race. Tell me, have you come down from October 12th yet? And that feeling as a coach, I mean, that must have been just something remarkable for you.
Yeah, to be honest, it always comes back to my mind, especially when you talk about it. When I have the possibilities to have podcasts like this, or when you have some journalists who contact you, or some friends or athletes who talk about it, then it goes quickly. So your thoughts are going quickly back to this date, and all the memories come up. So the positive memories, and. But on that day, it really took me a while to realize what they did, and in the end effect, what we as a team achieved there. And so I try just to say, hey, to be thankful for this and to enjoy the moment, and knowing that perhaps this will never happen to me again. And it was so much. I cannot really describe it in words, because there are the wins of these two athletes, but it's also two athletes I'm working already a long time with Jan from 2013 or 2012. At the end of 2012, we started. And with Annie, I started, I think, 18 years ago. So it's a long journey. And what comes there to a peak. And that's, I don't know if there are so many areas in life where you can feel what you are feeling there in that moment. And that's why I really like to go through this again and again at some good moment, or when you have a bad moment, to think about, that's a really a good motivation. And it was just a fantastic day, a fantastic year. And but what you said, Greg, I think that we also as coaches must say, we must also be thankful to have these talented athletes. If you have, you can be the best coach in the world. If you don't have the right athletes, it will just not work. Certainly, there are good coaches out there who just don't have the chance to have the right ones, and who can't show it in terms of high performance potential. And that's why take me back and said, hey, I had this chance. Then we did for sure a lot of things right. And but it could be that in the next 5 years, there are other guys, other athletes with other coaches who take over the lead. And then we go back to the cave and work again and try to bring out Annie and Jan, or perhaps some new ones in the next years. We will see.
Well, I just think congratulations all around. And I think you're allowed to give yourself a good pat on the back. And I think, a coach's role, it's a tough one, because quite often, when the athlete does well, they get all the glory. And when an athlete does bad, the coach gets the blame. And it's kind of like it's a difficult role to be in sometimes. And I just want to make sure that you get your recognition that I think you deserve, in terms of, working with those two athletes and the different personalities. And it's not just those two. You've done incredible work with also a good friend of mine, Sarah True, who's also, transitioning from the ITU to the Ironman distance. And I'm fascinated, actually. You mentioned, some of the work you're doing with the Bora Hansgrohe and some of that body core temperature measurement stuff that you're doing there. Sarah, for people that don't know, had an interesting year last year, where she had finished 4th at Kona in 2018 and was showing tremendous promise. She'd finished 2nd at Frankfurt Ironman, the European Championships that same year. Then in 2019, I think we were all going, okay, what can Sarah do now? She sort of positioned herself as one of the women that could do something special. She collapsed in the Cairns in Australia, in the Ironman there, and then in Frankfurt with a reasonable lead. She collapsed again with heat stroke. How is that looking for you working with Sarah now? As much about the physical as probably the mental approach that you're having with her now. How does that look like, using some of the products that you're doing with Bora Hansgrohe and testing and trying to figure out some of the heat work that you can do with Sarah?
So to come back to especially to this story, so in Cairns I was not there, but in Frankfurt I was there. I was on place, and it was perhaps one of the baddest moments I had as a coach. Even seeing Jan winning that race. But then Sarah in the lead with 15 minutes advance. She just would have had to walk through it and had won. But then I saw the pictures and I went to the tent where she was with the doctors, and it was really something you don't want really to see as a coach. But on the other side, it was just something. It was just so good to be there and to. I don't know if we can call it help, but to be there and support as good as possible. And also this helps for the future to work together, to have the trust and to go through it, what happened really there. And so it was never the case that we did something that was not allowed or permitted by doctors. So we had to check after Cairns, we had to check also after Frankfurt about what is going on with the body. So we really looked into it and tried to figure out what was going wrong there. Was it just the wrong nutrition, the wrong pace? Was it something completely else? I don't want to go too much in details because I think there are also some personal information in this, and I don't know if Sarah wants to share this. That's why it's what I want to point out is not that we said, okay, Cairns did went well, so we are doing Frankfurt again in the heat. Well, it didn't went well, so we continue. No, we really tried to figure out what was going on there. And what was also interesting, the company that developed now the sensor together with the cycling team, they saw these pictures, and that was the moment that they came to the idea to say, hey, we have to do something there, because what we see is a clear collapse of heat. And if the athlete perhaps could see how high the temperature is, perhaps the athlete could prevent this. And then the owner of that company called me and said, hey, yeah, I saw you are the coach of this athlete, and I was so fascinated by what happened there. And that's how we came together. That was
wow.
that is a really nice story. And for sure, when Sarah goes back to racing, or can go back to racing, we will also use it with her to get more information about this, what is going on in her body. We did this with some pills, so in the preparation for Kona, to try to figure it out. And it's what I can say is it's not just temperature or nutrition or something that a lot of specialists wrote us and try to give us advices. No, it's more than that, and we will work on this, and we'll see how her career is continue. We prepare her well. She's in training, and we have to wait how things are developing in US at the moment. But it was really a hard fall from 2080 with this really nice result in Frankfurt and Kona, and then this really bad 2019.
Yeah, it all makes for a better story when she does come back, though. You see, you need these stories of adversity to really make it even more special when it comes out later. What I'd like to do right now is just to get a bit more of a background on who you are and where you've come from to get to this point. So just tell me about, when did you sort of first find your passion for endurance sports?
So I started when I was a kid. I was playing soccer and got a knee injury. Then I had to change. I did strength training, and there I developed my passion for sports science, because I really like to tell that story. It was, you go to the gym and you saw there these big bodybuilders who talking about training and how many sets, the recovery and which product or whatever, and you were just there as a teenager and thinking about, okay, it's not just lifting weights, there seems to be more about it. And then you start to read, and that was the first time that I was really interested in sports science. And then after I started to start cycling, to do bike races, and I always had this passion for sports. So I really wanted to look sport in TV. I really like these moments when teams or athletes wins, when they have these emotional feelings. I really feel, wow, that's something special. I also I wanted to be an athlete, but then at some point I saw, okay, this will be quite hard. I was not without talent, but not that talent to be a high professional athlete. And that's why I said, okay, how can I make this? And with this interest in sports science, and when I started my sports science studies, I joined there a triathlon group. So we have from the university a triathlon group, and started to read a lot about endurance training, and also started already quite early to speak with people about it, because they saw, okay, he's reading a lot. He knows. It seems that he knows a lot. So we asked him, and that's also where I met first time Annie. So she also did the same study as I did, and she started there with triathlon. And she said, okay, I have no coach, so perhaps we can try it together. So you as a coach, me as an athlete, just let's go. And that was the starting point of our career. And that's where I got more and more, because then it was triathlon. Before the sport was not fixed. So it was not that I dreamed of being a triathlon coach all my life. So it was more about, there must be something in sports that I want to do. I felt that passion. And triathlon, in the end, it was also because of Annie, but also because when I spoke to triathletes, they always told me, I go running with the runners, I go on the bike with the cyclists, and I go in the swim with the swim squads. And for me, that was just make no sense, because it's just too much. So, and then I said, okay, this could be perhaps something you can be good in. So find out, how can you combine these sports together, and how is it possible to combine this to have the highest level in all of the three disciplines. And that's where I started to read and to coaching athletes. I start coaching everyone, not high performance athletes, but students and the neighbor, and I don't know, people who just want to lose weight. It doesn't matter. I want to get experience about this, and that was my start.
I love that. Joel Filiol, who I had on, and I'm sure you know fairly well, incredible coach, and especially in the ITU world. And he kind of described his learning process. He actually learnt so much from the athletes that he was coaching himself. Because I asked him, who are some of your biggest influences for your coaching style and that kind of thing. And I'll ask you the same question right now. But he was basically saying, actually, it was working with these athletes and the feedback. And it's interesting to hear you say, you're obviously working with Arnie Haug, who probably showed some ability and talent, but I'm also working with people that, wanted to just lose weight. Or, there's a whole plethora of people that you can work with to gain experience to become a better coach. And I love that. And so if we look at your key influences, when you started going, okay, there's more to it than just swim, bike, run. We need to look at it as triathlon as a whole. Where were you reading? What was the research, and what was the influence that you were getting? Was there somebody in particular that you were using?
I think I have a little bit the same answer. I learned most of the things from the athletes themselves, because how they react on the training, on their feedback. And then with Jan, I think that was also a big step. He was the first, let me call it, he was Olympic champion. So he was the first a little bit superstar in our small triathlon world that I started to coach. And also the first athlete who gives you the feeling there is no other option than winning. So it's I want to win. I can win, and I want the team around me who also believes in this. So I always described it as like a little bit like a cycling team. He was the captain, and all the people around knows that he can win. And if this is the case, then everybody is even more motivated to do the job. And that's where he's also pretty good to keep the motivation high of the people around him. And also it was for me quite the first time where I really felt this also pressure, because when Jan Frodeno is in the start line, it's always like, especially now on long distance, if he is not winning, it feels like he lost something, even if it's perhaps not the case. And to deal with this was also for me a big step. And also these talks with him about performance, about what it needs to be a high performance athlete, because to be honest, I have never been a high performance athlete. I think I thought I know how it should be, but I saw in him a guy who had all this. So I had my ideas about how you should live your sport, the passion you should have, the way of life you should have. And then he showed me, yeah, that's exactly how it is. And he shows me even more. And so from him, I learned a lot about this. And also from Annie, from when we start, from nobody to growing up to a high performance athlete, I got a lot. And then I had some some persons in my life, like for example, I work in the sports medicine department in the technical university in Munich, where I have doctors who, they said to me, hey, we want to show you everything we can, because you are talented in this, and we want to help you. And on the other way, I gave something back. I helped to develop training plans for their patients, to develop training plans for different sports. And so it was always a good relation. I always had the feeling that I had good relations with these people, and they want to help me, they want to educate me. And but it was not one specific person, it was more a bunch of different specialists in different fields. And it's something I continue even now, to have a good network, to talk. Even if, for example, if a student now contacts me and he wants to have an exchange, if I am really able to have the time, I do this. And so I not reject this. I try to have this speech. Or if I read something that there are some new researches, I try to contact the guy who did it. So I try to keep this exchange, to speak to people. And I think that is the best you can do. Even before reading, it's the best to talk to people and to have this network. And I think I have the philosophy, the more you give, the more you get. So if you don't talk about your job, or if you don't give out some of your working methods, then you cannot expect somebody else to tell you something. So you have to give something, and then you will also get something back.
I love that you're coming from the approach to, look, I don't know everything, and I'm always willing to keep learning more. And I think that's fantastic. And you keep learning and growing. And that's part of the reason I started this podcast was, after 30 years in the sport, I felt like I knew a fair bit, but boy, I'm a couple of years away from the sport. I'm like, I miss the learning from the greats. I miss, I'm curious as to what makes the best in the world tick. And that's like having you on this, being able to just chat with you now is just so fantastic for me personally, because it's like, okay, where are we at now in the sport compared to where we were 10 and 20 years ago? And I will get into more detail a bit later and training specifics, but I'm just fascinated about your relationship with working with Jan Frodeno. So you were the German national head coach. Is that right? Is that when you guys met? You guys met in 2012, you said, or 20? You met earlier than that, but you started working together in 2012, right?
Yeah, no, we met really in person at the end of 2012 after the Olympic Games. We really met the first time in person, because I started then as the under 23 national coach in Germany, in Saarbrücken. So at where Jan lived, where he trained. So 6 months in the year, and there we met first time. I think the story, or perhaps the story is known. We met at the pool, so he came to swim training. He was sick, and I saw him the first time, and we just he was Jan Frodeno, so everybody had a lot of respect from in front of him, and he came to me and said, I'm Jan. I said, I'm Dan. Hello, so he wants to swim, but I heard that he was sick. He has a sore throat. And I told him, Jan, but I think you are sick. And he said, yes, a little bit, but it's no problem. I can do this. And I told him, no, you go home now. You go home, recover, and then you come back when you are healthy again. It makes absolutely no sense to go to a swim when you are sick. And then his first reaction was, I think in his head, what the fuck does he want from me? He's the under 23 coach. He wants to tell me now that I will not swim. But then in his second thought, it was, perhaps he's right. and then he went home, so he didn't swim that day, and but he came back in the evening to the gym to do a little bit of gym, and there he came to my office, and there was his approach to, if I could imagine that I coach him. So he was looking for a new coach, having some new input, and also want to go on long distance over the next years, and he was looking for a new coach, for a fresh coach. That's where we met the first time.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, I mean, obviously you gained enormous respect by sending him home. I think that was, firstly, I love that, but it's also interesting because at that point on the scoreboard, you hadn't shown that you were an Ironman coach, had you? Did you have any athletes doing Ironman or long distance racing and performing well, or did Jan just happen to see something in you?
I just had one girl at that time, and she was good, but she was not world class. She was good, but not as good to bring Jan Frodeno to the point to say, okay, that's now the coach that I need. So I think we must ask himself what make him doing that step to come to me. We have never talked about it 100%. So what I heard after was that he got already some information about me before I came there. So he make already some research about who is this guy who come now to Saarbrücken. So it was not that I was completely unknown to him. But I don't know why he then really said, okay, that could be the guy who can coach me. Perhaps it was just because I'm there. I was a new coach. I just had at this point two athletes, two under 23 athletes, because there was no more under 23 athletes at that moment. And he said, the guy just has time. He's motivated. Perhaps that was enough for him. I don't know.
Maybe, right? Or maybe it was a simple fact that you sent him home. That he's like, that's the kind of person that's the kind of person I need to work with. And you touched on Jan, being a captain type mentality, and almost a born champion. And when I had him on the podcast, and Jan and I have been mates for 15, 16 years. And what was interesting about Jan is that he wasn't a born champion. In fact, that he had something like 40, 45, I can't remember now off the top of my head, ITU starts, and he'd never won. And I think he'd had maybe one podium or something before the Olympic Games when he actually did win in 2008. And then he still, that next sort of 4-year blocks to 2012, he had a lot of success, but he was up against, Alistair Brownlee, Jonathan Brownlee, and Javier Gomez, who were just starting to really light the world on fire. And Jan was definitely in the mix during that time, but he never owned that top step of the podium for that 4 years up until the 2012 Olympics. But he did very well defending his title, coming in sixth. He struggled a lot with a lot of little niggling injuries. I think being 6'4", trying to keep his, there's a lot of room for error between the brain and the feet to have feet injuries and Achilles or whatever he was dealing with. I feel like the taller athletes often have to deal with a bit of that. So there's probably a little bit where he is a champion. He's touched on it by, winning the Olympic gold, and the way he did was just absolutely phenomenal. He's then backed it up with a reasonable, next 4 years, going into 2012. But then I think he knew there was more to give. I feel like he'd been given a taste of success with the Olympics and a few World Series events and that kind of thing. But I think deep down he knew there was more. Is that what you got the feeling from him? It was like, I've scratched the surface on my ability. There's more, and I think going long course is what I need to do.
Yeah, I think that's something what we found out then in the years that we worked together. So at the beginning, when I saw his first performance test, I was quite shocked, because I thought, wow, this is the Jan Frodeno that everybody is talking about, or in Germany is talking about. I thought, okay, so there's a lot of work to do. And so in that moment, it was, I could not tell him from the data that he will be the successful athlete that he's now, that he will be this again, because the data were quite normal. And so I know, okay, we have to work. And I think that is something what he appreciates about our relation. Perhaps he saw in me, okay, that is not a guy who is so emotionally and so on, so guided by emotion than Jan is, but he's perhaps a little bit the opposite, and that is something that he needs. Somebody who breaks him down, who can calm him down, who says, okay, it's enough to do this, and you don't have to do more. So perhaps this was something what he was looking for, to have a little bit the different pole to find the right combination. But then during our work, we saw really what his body is able to, I saw things that I have never seen before. So to do long blocks, his body was able to sustain this, which steps we could do in performance with a short amount of time. And then we talked sometimes about this. Yeah, perhaps there was more possible. And but yeah, we cannot turn back the time. We don't even know if it's true. But we find then a really good way to work together. And also Jan, I think he learned year by year how to treat his body, how to perhaps not always more is better. I think that is also a learning process that he went through, and that made it also possible for him to start this new successful journey on the long distance, and also for a longer time now, not just for one event, but really for several events that he did.
Just a quick mini break before we get back to the show. I just want to remind you guys to go check out athleticgreens.com/Greg. Sign up and get your free 20 daily travel packets with your first order of $79 added value. That's athleticgreens.com/Greg. You know, Jan, as I mentioned, we did a lot of training together, both in, Noosa, Australia, and even when I was in Saarbrücken in 2010, I think, before the Budapest World Championships. We spent a month together, but I'll never forget, I think it was around 2014, 2015. I was on my way out, but I was joining Jan for a training workout, and I think we were warming up. There was myself, Tim O'Donnell, Jan Frodeno. There was a group of us training, and we were doing Jan's workout, and it was probably one that you prescribed. And anyway, I think we were meant to be running 4-minute Ks in warm up, and suddenly I just hear Jan yell, "Fuck!" He's all pissed off. And I'm like, "What's going on, buddy? What's happening?" We're only like 3 or 4 or 5K into the warm up. He's like, that was a 4:03. I'm meant to be running 4 minutes. I'm like, whoa, buddy. It was this passionate guy that needs a grounding coach like yourself. Like someone that, like, I'm much the same as Jan, that I need to have a grounding type person to bring me back to, okay, you're being just a bit emotional, a bit passionate now. Do you find that is your role, somewhat as a grounding for him?
Yeah, I think so, yes. So we had, in the first year, we had the chance really to work together, so to see us day by day. And there I saw this emotional explosions, I would call them, when things went good, but especially when things went wrong. And things were thrown through the air and whatever. And I saw this, and that was good that I saw it, because it was also the first time that I saw this kind of explosion in the training, where other people say, "Hey, come on, it's just one training. Go on. Tomorrow is the next day." But for him, it was, if you have already lost the war, if one interval was not as it should be. And but there, for sure, it was really my role to bring him down to ground and to make him, to give him the security that, hey, it's nothing happened, Jan. If we can continue to work tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, you can still be one of the best. And you don't lose it today, but you can lose it in the next days if you continue to kill yourself. So please take it easier, and then we go on.
Yes, I think I look at someone like Jan, and I'm not judging him, because I think I was much the same. It took a lot of growing through my career to sort of get a handle on that. I will call it passion, desperation, fear, doubt, everything else that creeps in, and you start to you're the hardest critic on yourself, and you think, well, everything does matter, but sometimes you're sweating about the small things that don't matter in the end. And so I think it's great that you've been a great sort of just a grounding place for him. And when was it that you kind of were like, I mean, you'd obviously done the testing. Was there a point where you were like, okay, this guy could win Kona? You started to feel more confident about it, because it was only 2 years later and he won in 2015.
Yeah, that was hard for me to say, because I didn't know what it needs to win Kona. So I have never coached a guy who have won Kona before. So for sure, I can look at data of other athletes, but I always told Jan, in our first meeting, Jan told me, yeah, but if he's doing Kona, he wants to win it. And I said, okay.
Of course.
And then I make some calculation in my head, and this took 10 seconds. And then I said, okay, 2015, we can do this. And then he said, okay, good, that's a deal. And in the end, it worked out. But my concept is always, okay, I look, what does it need to have the best performance in Kona? But does not mean that I see, okay, you have to push now 300 watts for 180 Ks. No, I know, okay, it's a long endurance effort. You need to work on this and this and this. And then I try to build the athlete as good as possible for this competition, and not just fixing on one number or one time, but the best performance possible. And that is how we also prepared then Kona. We have a system behind it. We said, okay, that's our way. But we didn't know if he has, like I said, if he has to push this or to run this. We just tried to transform him from a short course athlete to a long course athlete. We looked at what are the physiology needs of such an event, and then we worked on that. And it's never that we say, okay, in training we have to do this session, and if you do this sessions well, you can win Kona, because there are so much impacts, so much influence from outside, so you cannot be sure about this. But we had always want to make sure that there's a progress, that you see, okay, it goes from session to session, or let me say from block to block, you see a progress in performance. And after the race, we make an analyze what was good, what was bad, and then we try to work on that. But it's not that we said, okay, there is now Sebastian Kiel or there is now Linus Sanders, whatever. We have to change our tactics. We have to work more on this and this. No, we're really focusing on ourselves, and then to be ready on day X, and then to show the best possible performance. Sometimes a little bit of tactics, that is something what Jan decides in the race. We talk about this, but could be a way. What is the best point perhaps to attack if there's a need to attack? For sure, we talk about this, but in the preparation, it's more about, okay, boosting, swimming, running, cycling, and bring it to the best level possible.
Mm. And you're working with him now mostly remotely. I mean, what he said, he hasn't hardly seen you for quite a while, but it wasn't always like that, was it? I mean, 2013, 14, he was still in Germany, I think, and then he's only recently moved to Spain the last couple of years. How's that transition being from working and seeing an athlete every day to having to work remotely?
Mm-hmm. That's so if you would have asked me 10 years before if it is possible to coach athletes over distance, especially high performance athletes, I would have said no, just not possible. You have to see them every day, you have to be there, you have to support them. And so what is in the general picture of a good coach? But then came the situation with Jan. It started with him. He wants to move, so he had half of the year he was in Nusa, half of the year he was in Germany. And after he moved to Girona, so we can now continue the work relationship online, or we just have to stop it, because it was for me at that point also not possible to move several times to Girona, wherever, because my main job was national coach in Germany, and they didn't really, was not good seen that I also coach one athlete outside the federation, because long distance triathlon is not anymore in a federation. It's not Olympic. That's why it's a different business. So that's why I didn't have these possibilities. And Jan, so it was a decision of Jan. I told Jan, hey, Jan, you could have every coach of the world. Perhaps you should choose someone who is free, who can come to your home and live close to Girona or whatever, or at least go with you to training camps. But he said, no, I'm fine with this. I really like that you look at the data, that you give an objective feedback without seeing me, just objective feedback. And then we can talk about it. And for me, it's fine. As long as it works, he doesn't want to change it. And we have always, generally in Kona, this talk every year to say, okay, should we continue like this? And because I like to hear every year from the athlete, is it still his best decision? And until today, he still said yes. And just to finish this, you asked me at the beginning how I came to endurance sports. I think the reason why I'm doing the job is what I would know, what I can do really well is to feel what other people are feeling. So if I see a training, a file of Jan, of a run or of a bike session, I can, even if I'm at home, I can live these sessions through. So I can feel a little bit what for sure he felt during this. And that is something I had, or I recognized already really early, already as a teenager or as a young adult, that I have the feeling that I can feel when I see somebody doing a sport or whatever, that I can feel this, and that helped me for sure also to better analyze data. And with the cycling team, it's nothing else. So with the cycling team, I can also not see them every day. They are spread all over Europe, and so you see them sometimes in the training camp, sometimes at the race. But the daily business is online coaching. And it's
so you've got an amazing feeling at looking at data and numbers and putting it into the human psyche and physiology. I think that's extraordinary. You can look at these data files and actually feel like you can be inside that athlete's head and almost sense what they were feeling. That's extraordinary, and I love that. When it comes to the cyclists, are you writing their training program? Like, how does that work? Are you with 27 cyclists, you're not writing training programs for all of them, are you? Or how's that work?
No, we have 4 coaches in our coaching group. I am the head coach of this group, but that does just mean that I'm responsible for education, for organization stuff, for general schedules when we go to training plans, and to keep the team together. So and on the other side, every coach has his athletes. So at the beginning I had 9 athletes. Now I reduced the number to 6 because I have other tasks in the team that I'm doing. And so all the athletes are spread to these 4 coaches. And every coach can work with his athletes individually, but we have a training platform that we are using, and every training plans of every athlete is online. So I could have a look at the training plans of my colleague, of his athletes. I can have a look at their if they have a chat there, see this. We can talk about this. So it's an open system. So we're working together as this coaching group, but the responsible coach for every athlete is so every athlete has his own individual team coach, and that's how we are how we are working.
And so it's like the sprinters and the climbers and the domestics, they've all got their specific coaches. Is that how it works within the team?
No, it's really mixed. So, for example, I have in my team, I have the 6 athletes like Pascal Ackermann, so he's a sprinter. I have Emanuel Buchmann, who is our GC contender. Where Max Schachmann, Rafael Maika, so GC contenders. Sprinters last year, or until last year, I also had Sam Bennett, who is also a sprinter. So it's more mixture. It's more about personalities. So we try to find out which personalities fits together. And if an athlete is not happy with the coach, what happened in generally, I think it has happened one time, then for sure he can also change. He can also say, hey, I think this coach suits better to me. And then it's possible in this group. But every athlete has to have a team coach. That's the only thing that it's not possible to have an external coach in our team. And we have different personalities.
That was going to be my next question. I was wondering if athletes, because I mean, they're traded, from team to team, and they might get comfortable with a certain other coach. So that's interesting. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, in our team, it's not possible. You need to have a team coach. We have coaches from different countries with different backgrounds, so with different personalities. So I think nearly every athlete could find a coach that fits for him. And the fluctuation is small. We had sometimes that after some years, one guy say, okay, perhaps I want to go to the other one. Or perhaps the team management says, hey, what do you think if perhaps this guy changed just the coach to see if we can find more potential? But important in this decision process is it's never a decision against a coach. It's just to get the best potential out of the athlete. It could be that another combination is better. So that is also something we have. Perhaps you also notice it's not, sometimes you don't have the right success with one coach, and it's not always that the training or whatever is not good, but perhaps it's not the right fit from the personal personalities. And then you are losing too much energy to find there the balance, and this energy is lost for the training and for the performance development.
So it's you've got a lot of work going on between being the head coach for this, one of the world's greatest cycling teams, to then being the coach of probably 2 of the greatest Ironman, 3 of the greatest, with Sarah True, Ironman athletes in the world. Have you had a big demand of, since 2019 especially, with more professional triathletes reaching out and asking for coaching? And have you had to turn many of them away?
Yeah, big. I don't know what you call a big demand, but there were several demands.
I'd be reaching out. If I was still racing and I was doing Ironman, you'd be at the top of my list to say, I need this guy to coach me. So I'm curious.
No, but I had some demands, some athletes who contact me and ask me, is it possible to coach me next year, or how are you working, or what are your methods, or whatever. And I could not really accept some of them because of my main jobs. And sometimes I even help them to find perhaps another coach. And so that's you have a network, perhaps other coaches where you think this could fit together. And sometimes it's also, and you say, oh, fuck, it would be nice also to coach this one, but you just have a certain limit of time. And you have to be honest, even if you cannot really require the demand of the athlete, I think then you are the problem in his career. So it's the career of the athlete, and the athlete must look that he gets the best possible fit. And then you, as a coach, you must be honest and say, hey, it would be really nice to coach you, and I would really appreciate this, but I don't have the time, so better to choose for another one. And
I want to move on a little bit into some of the specifics, if that's okay with you, on your training philosophies, because I think, for a lot of us a lot of listeners that have got Ironmans or 70.3s that are on the horizon, I mean, it's hard to plan right now, but when you look at a year, do you have a general philosophy that you're going to use as a template to cross over all the athletes and then kind of finesse it depending on the personality? And if yes, what does that kind of a year look like? Or what is what is a kind of a 12-month or a 6-month block look like for you?
So first of all, I look which kind of athlete do I have in front of me. So in general, we start with some weeks of easy training, and then we're making, let me call it a metabolic profile. So seeing, okay, how good is this aerobic system? How good is this anaerobic system? What are the skills in cycling, running, and swimming? And then, so that is just to get a picture. Okay, that's the athlete we have at the moment. That's the point where we are. And then we are looking, okay, where do we want to go? So what is the requirement? Is it Kona? Is it short distance triathlon or whatever? Or is it the Tour de France? And then we say, okay, we fix a general plan with races. So we say, okay, these are the races we want to do. In triathlon, I prefer to do not so many races. So in general, my athletes are not doing so much races during the year, because I think in triathlon you can have a better development when you're focusing on your training, and then are going to race, and not to prepare, but really, if you're doing a race, you do it 100%, and you try to go for really all-out effort there. And then it depends a little bit, but in general, I would describe my philosophy that we try to go up with the aerobic level. So we are working with most of the athletes at the beginning of a training phase on the VO2 max. So bringing this up, then we switch a little bit. We go more to a strength endurance phase, and then in the end. So I make it really shortly because it would take too much time to explain it in detail. But just to give an idea, so it's the VO2 max block. Then we have a strength endurance block, and then we have a race specific block. And this kind of block, so the first time that we are doing this, it's about perhaps 12 to 16 weeks or 3 to 4 months at the beginning of the season until perhaps the first race. And then we repeat these blocks several times during the year, depending a little bit on the gaps we have. And then for sure comes specific adaptation for Kona, heat training, or if some athletes doing competition at the altitude, or if I have athletes working a lot with altitude training, we have to figure out where is the right spot to put this training. But in general, this is a little bit how we proceed with most of the athletes. And then comes some exceptions. So if somebody has already high VO2 max at the beginning of the season because he has it, then perhaps we start with different stuff. But it's always a little bit from short to long. So we work more on short intervals, on technique, on speed, on VO2 max, and after to bring it to more longer distances. So I
love that.
Yeah. And on the other side, I prefer, especially at the beginning of the season, I really also prefer this kind of polarized training. So doing also a lot of training really, really easy. And then on the other side, being fresh enough to do these short intervals, this what I told you, VO2 max work and technical efforts.
It's interesting you bring that up. It's kind of a philosophy that we had, especially the second half of our career for my wife and I. And it's a little bit, I got to the point of sort of believing, especially in the shorter course racing, look, if I can run 1 kilometer in 2:45, ideally all I'm trying to do is get fit enough to run 10 back-to-back in 2:55, 10 seconds slower off my best. And that is purely just aerobic endurance, strength endurance. It's not speed work so much if I can already run a 2:45? It's coming from, but it's interesting. Do you find that doing that, do you have to be very careful if an athlete's come off a break, getting back into VO2, any kind of speed work? How much time do you give them before touching on any of that sort of VO2 max work? Because I kind of find like the fascial system can be quite tight after a break. Or don't you prescribe breaks? That's another question, I guess.
For sure there are breaks. In general, we talk about a 4-week break, but we have there 2 weeks of perhaps off, and then 2 weeks of, like I call it, fit for fun. So there where athletes just moving around and doing what they want, and then we go back to normal. In general, I don't believe in doing too long breaks. Sometimes it could help, especially if there's a mental aspect about it. But for the body, it's like you said, if you do 4 weeks or longer nothing, you have a quite big degeneration of your muscles, of your tendons, of whole structures. So you need time to come back to the level to be able to do the necessary work. But there we must split the disciplines. For sure, on the bike, for example, you can start earlier with VO2 max efforts than in the run. In the run, you need a little bit more base. And then when I do it on the run, I start, for example, also with hill reps. So doing it more on the hills than on the flat, because there the impact is not so high. And then it's a build up. So it's really a build up week by week that the body has the time to adapt to this impact. It's not, what I don't like is sometimes you see training plans that of a session come out of nowhere. So it's you see it's a really hard session, but it's not prepared. So the athletes or there comes a critical power testing, and it was never some intensity before. So where I say, hey, but it's clear that the body will struggle here, and even there's a risk of an injury. Why should we do this? So it's better to prepare it. And that's why, especially in this first 3 to 4 months that I described, we use a lot of time also to get used to the impacts. And a VO2 max interval training, for sure. When we look at literature, we say, okay, 20 minutes you should be around in your VO2 max area to have perhaps the highest benefit from that session. Then depends a little bit, but for sure, in my first VO2 max session of an athlete, I would not be 20 minutes in that area. I would just start it shortly, and then perhaps we don't have the full VO2 max effort, not effort, but the full VO2 max effect. But we have an adaptation of the muscles, of the tendons, of the bone to be able to do the trainings we need later in the year.
That's interesting. So I didn't actually know that. So around that 20, and that's 20 minutes straight, or is it 20 minutes worth of intervals?
No. For example, if you do 40-20s, so for example, this kind of intervals, and you take the 40 seconds and you can, so with these 40 seconds, you can do several times until you reach 20 minutes. So of load, not the 20 seconds, but the 40 seconds. So until you reach it, that's, it's a number. So it's around this.
No, I get it. Yeah. It's funny. I look back and I think my favorite workout of all time is 20 by 1 minutes with 1 minute recovery for my running.
Oh, yeah.
And trying to keep the 1 minute recovery as I approach, I'd actually do this probably the opposite of what you were saying. I would do this. Well, I do it most of the year round. I would keep my 2-hour long run steady, and I'd keep this kind of one VO2 max workout sort of throughout the year. But I'd like to do it about 3 weeks out from a key race, this 20 by 1 minute with 1 minute recovery. The 1 minute recovery, trying to keep it, solid. So I'm still kind of running 4 minute K pace. And then the 1 minute fast is, as far under 3 minute K pace as I can. And so it's kind of building the aerobic strength endurance a little bit, but still trying to focus on the 20 minutes of VO2 work. What do you think about that kind of a workout? Do you think it's too much on the body in the sense that maybe you're burning a match that you could have used for a race?
You mean now this 20 time 1 minute efforts?
Yeah, with a fairly strong recovery on it. So you're not fully recovering. You kind of...
No, in general, it's for sure you will train your VO2 max with this. So it's a VO2 max training. And then it depends a little bit on two things, how hard this 1 minute is. And on the other side, also how reactive your anaerobic system is. So, for example, if you're doing this 1 minute too hard, so that it's not a VO2 max effort, but a higher effort, then it could happen that's for sure you will build up your VO2 max, but you will also build up your lactate building rate. So you will build up your anaerobic system. And the combination of both, so the result will be that you will not get better. So you will not have a higher threshold. You will not have a higher endurance in the race. So that's where you have to be careful. If you are an athlete who have a low, really weak anaerobic system, then this could also help you a little bit to have there a boost, or even it will have no big impact, because if you have a really weak anaerobic system, it will not react on one session of this. So if, for example, if you do this kind of session with a sprinter type, it could be that you just have some really high anaerobic impact work, and it's absolutely the opposite of what you wanted to do. And that's why the same session could have a different effect depending on the metabolic profile of the athlete.
God, I love that. I think because I'm not a sprinter by any means, so the chance of me going anaerobic was pretty minimal anyway. So I'm going to look at it and go, I totally understand what you're saying, and I think that's fantastic. And in terms of building the aerobic engine, when you're specific to triathletes, are you focusing on miles plus intensity, or how are you? If you send Jan out for a long run, is he doing just a straight long run for 2 hours at a certain pace, or are you just saying time on the legs, or is that different throughout the year?
We have their different versions. So one version, what he also prefers, and what in sometimes during the year is good, is, for example, we say go out for a long run, 1 hour, 1.5 hour, 2 hours, but a hilly one. So he can, then it's okay to have this kind of intensity changes. For sure, he will not now go over threshold. He knows, okay, I will stay under threshold, but it has a higher metabolic load than if we say, okay, Jan, now it's important just to have a steady pace run, flat, no intensity spikes. It depends on what we want to do, but there are changes, and we with him are working with when we went flat with speed and time. With other athletes, we're working with heart rate. It depends a little bit from athlete to athlete. Jan is quite experienced. He also, when he runs on speed, he has still his heart rate. He sees, okay, I'm still in the range that I should be. So, but with others, I really prescribe, okay, in this long run, try to keep your heart rate around 130 to 140, somewhere around this. And if you go on a hilly run, perhaps a little bit higher, but then you must also know that it's a different one. So if you have a steady pace run flat, and if you have a hilly run, perhaps you both call it a long endurance run, but it has a different metabolic impact.
And what about the bike? I'm really curious as to what you've done, because Jan Frodeno was a reasonable biker in ITU, but he was nothing like a standout. He wasn't the guy charging off the front ever. I never saw him in any non-drafting Olympic distance racing to know what kind of his 40K power was like. But it seemed to me that over the space of the 2 years that you guys worked on, that he suddenly went from this incredible ITU athlete that generally means you're a very good swim runner to be this somewhat of an Uber biker. And he never got called an Uber biker probably until this last year or two, because he had such good of weapons in the swim and the run. What have you done with your athletes? Annie Haug, Jan Frodeno, Sarah True, all their bikes improvement, so amazing. What's the core of the bike for you guys?
Yeah, I think when we take Jan, I think it's really a mixture. So it's a mixture of his own interest in technique, in try to find the best material, the best position, always working on this. And also to having in head, especially what you said, that in the past he was perhaps not the strongest biker. He was more, not a weak one, but not the strongest one. And he knows, okay, I have to work on this. And for sure, one part is also that, with my background I have for sure different options to work on, especially in the cycling in the training programs. And then we also used really specific roller sessions. I think that also helped him to develop himself, so to find the effectiveness of roller training in at home. And I think it's really a mixture of this, of the training, of the passion he has, of the weak point that what he still thinks is, okay, there's still a weak point cycling, and I always have to get better and better. But it's a lot of work. And in the end, the people just see the outcome. But Jan, Jan has also to work a lot to get to that point. It's not that they just fly to him. And in the past years, sometimes in the run, you have this. You felt like, okay, if you're doing the run some right sessions, it comes faster. So it comes really faster to a point to say, okay, now we are ready for the run in the long distance. But on the bike, it's really a lot of work. So and I would not say that it's just one specific thing. It's a mixture, and the same with Annie. She's doing a lot of work. She's suffering a lot. Also on the roller, it's especially for her. She's a really light athlete, a small athlete, and there it's not so easy, especially when the courses are flat, to produce that power and to keep up with some stronger girls. And but it's a process. It's a process of working, and also of knowing what it means to spend hours on the bike, and I think that is the point, to also enjoy this, because sometimes they didn't enjoy it when they come from a short distance. They didn't enjoy 5 hours bike rides, but now they even enjoy it, and that's important. You have to enjoy what you are doing there, and I also tried it. Or when I see that it goes in a different direction, we also try to change something and to bring some variation, because in the end, it's not the most sexiest training that has the biggest impact. Sometimes the training is just quite standard, but you have to change it just because of to bring something new in, and to change a little bit the rhythm, and But for the metabolic adaptations, there are some standards that we are using, and they are working.
But I love the fact that I think you're still changing it up throughout the year for them by focusing on like you said, the VO2 part, to the strength endurance, to the race specific. So they're getting different adaptations throughout the year, but also they're getting a bit of a mental break from doing VO2 work. Okay, now I can focus on hill reps or strength work or big gear work or whatever it is on the bike. Okay, now I can do the longer miles. So it's kind of, they get a change of scenery throughout the year. So I think that probably helps break up the monotony of the consistent hard work. And like you said, I think with Jan, watching his bike position, do you work with his bike sponsor Canyon in developing that position, or you've just let Jan do that for himself?
I let Jan do this. He has some engineers from Canyon. We have a company for seating position for aerodynamic analysis. Also, Jan's manager, Felix, he's involved in this, so he's always on his side with this. So that I would love to be also there more beside this, but it's just not possible. And that's why I look at the results, I give my judgment on it. And I also, when we change a bike position, I told him something seems to be not so smooth, so good there. So I give him my opinion. But in the end, it's about himself and the team around Canyon, and also about a company in Germany who makes this kind of seating position analyzed, that we are working together. It's a nice network. It's nice to have people on board.
It's a good team. It's a really good team. I mean, and Jan brought that up several times in the podcast of his incredible team with Felix, the manager you mentioned, yourself, Canyon, his wife, Emma Frodeno. He's got this amazing team of people around him, which takes time to build over the years, but he's got, obviously, it's the right ingredients right now. How much are you involved with when, we touched on it a bit earlier, but with each of your athletes' specific racing and how they're going to race within the race? Or do you just allow the athlete to go race however they want?
So we talk before the race. We talk about a tactic. So about, okay, what do you think am I able to do, especially on the bike and on the run? And then we say, okay, what could be a tactic? Where could be a point to attack? How far should I go over threshold if I attack? So these are things we discuss. But I always give the advice to the athletes, and that it's just a rough plan. It's not that they should stick on the watts per 100%. It's their body feeling what is really important. They bring in the experience. They have so much case in training, so that they really know their body. And we just give a rough plan so that they know, or that they can react on different situations, and they can always make some kind of adjustment or some kind of comparison between, okay, that is what my power meter is saying, that is how I'm feeling, that is the race situation, and then he has in mind, what did we talk about? So, and then we fixed this plan. And in the end, it's also the decision of the athletes. I can just mention any. She had really a bad season, 2019 before Copenhagen. So a big injury, no competitions, and then came Copenhagen with this really nice win. And then she went to Kona, but the time for preparation was quite short. And we were not sure, or we thought if she could go to the podium, that would be really great with this preparation. But we had a talk some days before the race, and I asked her, okay, what do you want to do? So we have two possibilities. One is we go conservative, and then perhaps you can do top 5. And what would be really great, sponsors would be happy, all fine. Or we could go all in. And then she said, no, Dan, I want to win. And I said, what? Yeah, I want to win that race. And I said, okay, good. Then we change our plan. Then we have to be quite aggressive.
I love that. I love that.
With the risk to lose everything, to lose that, because I told Annie, okay, you can do this, and if this and this happens, you can hold on for, I don't know, half an hour. But if it's not possible, you just will blow up. Are you ready? Are you ready to accept this? And she said, yes, I would want to try. Better to blow up than to be 5th and have not tried everything to win the race. And that's the approach. So it's the athlete who is the main person in this construct, and who can take decisions, and all the team is there to support, to give consultants, and to give their opinions. But it's the decision of the athlete in the end, what she or he wants to do. What is his biggest motivation?
I love that all-in approach from Annie. Gives me goosebumps. You know what I mean? It's like that, because you know the suffering that's going to take place. It's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to say, yeah, I'm going to go win, and but you know there's going to be a point, like you said, where you're going to be above threshold for a long, long time, to the point that it could really hurt you later in the race. But and when I say hurt you, it literally hurts, a lot. But being prepared and having that mindset to do it. And I guess that touches on the next bit. One of the things I love to talk with the guests about is the mindset and the mental strategies that they take in. Are you involved in that part with your athletes, or again, is that a bit of the approach to the racing as well? It's up to the athlete to do that, or are you working with them, or are you suggesting that some athletes work with sports psychologists?
So in general, it's something when it goes to racing, we have some talks about this, about what is going on from the mental side, how they could deal with race situations. But for example, Jan has a lot of experience in this. He worked in the past with some sports psychologists. He has his own strategies. And with Annie also, he saw already a lot during her career. And it's mostly some days before the race where it's a main talk about where you have to bring the athletes in the right mood. So give them the assurance that they are ready, and that they are ready for the fight. Let me call it like this, that nothing could happen. And even if we can now change nothing, we just have now go through it and be ready for it. And we have different approaches. Jan, for example, he likes to talk to himself. He likes to talk to his pain. He's thinking more. And Annie, if you'd ask her what were her thoughts in Kona, she just said, I don't know, nothing. She was just in a flow. And so you already on these two examples, you see different approaches. And if I see athletes, and I saw this in the past, so athletes who's really struggling, and if you have a coach no access to this, you can try to bring them together with a sports psychologist. I think it's a good thing if it's about learning tools, about learning how to deal with different situations. But it should always be, as a coach, you should always know a little bit what is going on, because you have an impact on the mental side of the athletes, the psychologist has, and it could be that this is not in the right, that it's not in the same direction, and then it gets a little bit critical. So I love to speak to them. I also have different people that I speak to. I think really the best is that you have that you as a coach you have a lot of skills in that area, so that you do it as long as possible on your own. But if you see that you need a different approach, or if there are even topics that you have the feeling the athlete doesn't want to speak to the coach, to you as coach role, then for sure it's good to have something in your team who can jump in and help them with it. And but to be honest, with my most successful athletes, I don't have a sport psychologist at the moment.
No.
I just go through them all now. No, so the really successful, to them who really won or so winning in a row, I don't have. But I'm really open to this. So it's not that I reject it. It's more I want to see it case by case. It's not that I say every sportsman or every sportswoman needs a sport psychologist. And on the other side, I also say, oh, it's you don't need it at all. So it's really individual.
It really is. And it's an area that I've come to really love, even more so doing this podcast. When I was an athlete, it was one thing I used a lot of the mental strategies, visualizing affirmations, all of that kind of stuff. And I think I was a lot more like Jan, where I'd talk to myself almost like there was a little commentator in my head. But it's one of the guests I just had on, Dr. Tommy Wood. And he's a PhD in neuroscience, and it was fascinating when he said, what you think has a direct impact on your physiology, and it's that mindset of what we can think about during an Ironman, under fatigue, under duress, and how we can affect ourselves hormonally to have an effect on ourselves. It's just a very I feel like we got a long way to go in that area. It's kind of I think some athletes get it naturally. They already have these mental strategies in place, and others have to work at it. I'm totally envious of Annie Haug being able to just find a state of flow and not have to think at all, or just be in that zone and can't even remember the conversations that she kind of had. Because I think that's where we all want to get to, is that point where like, oh, 2 hours just went by, huh? It's like that's the goal that we're all after. But what about on the nutrition side? Are you having any involvement with your athletes on that, or you mentioned ketones at the top of the show, but or do you leave that up to them as well?
No. So the athletes work with different nutritionists together. So it's not that I'm just working with one, but it depends on who does the athletes know, who is in their environment, which person, who have they trust to work on. For me, it's just important to know what they are doing in nutrition, and that's also a field that I like also to share with the specialists and to learn about it, to understand what are the strategies, as long as it is adapted to the training. So I think nutrition should be adapted to the training. And if you have a nutritionist, it's for me quite clear that also the nutritionist should know what you are doing in training. Otherwise, it's quite hard. And it's like always when you have different person, so a person from different fields, and they all have an impact on the athletes, it should fit together. And that is the role of the coach, to bring this together and to have an eye on that all these experts are working in the same direction, and that not the good thing from the one and the good thing for the other are in the end bad in combination for the athletes. I think that's a little bit the danger when you have too many people involved and or involved and not controlled really, not in a bad way, but controlled in a good way. So you should work as a team, should share information, should talk about what you are doing. And that's how we treat it in the team. In the team, we also have a team nutritionist and who works with some athletes individually. If we go for training camp, he's making the plans with our chefs together for the training. He has the training plan. He adapted to the load, to the intensities. But in the end, we all know what is the strategy behind it. So it's not one guy working and nobody understands, but we should also understand what is the strategy behind, I don't know, some more carbs or a certain amount of carbs during the rides and all this stuff.
No, I think that's fantastic. And it's almost like removing ego between all the different roles, that you're all in it together to try and come up with the best solution for the one athlete or the team of athletes when you're talking cycling. What about, just want to finish up here, I've kept so much of your time and I really appreciate it, Dan, just some gear recommendations, whether swim, bike, run, recovery, nutrition, sleep. Is there anything kind of specific that you're like, okay, listeners, you've got an Ironman coming up, or you're a professional cyclist, or you just want to get a little bit fit. Is there anything that stands out to you that people should start maybe adding into their, daily routines?
I think I have two or three really, really basic. So one thing is that so training is stress for the body. So just to make it short. So when you have already a lot of stress in your daily life, and I don't know if from your job or from your partner or whatever, take care that you adapt your training to this. So better to do just easy training, aerobic training, and to adapt it and to give your body also the time to recover from this. That is really, really important, because nothing is so bad for your body or for your training effect than negative or bad stress. And if you boost this effect with hard training, it's just the worst thing you could do. And it's something what I see a lot of time, or what I saw a lot of time with age group athletes, that they have problems at home and then in the job, and then they try to get their head clear with some hard training session, and they just at some point kill themselves. Then it's important also there for the basic, try to keep enough sleeping hours, to keep your routines, to have a good nutrition, have an eye on your body weight, really easy things. And then just focusing that you can do your training sessions in a as less stressful environment as possible. So you have to enjoy it. You need, after the session, a little bit of time to calm down, and just to respect the needs of your body. I think that is the most important thing. And then you can achieve a lot, even with small amount of training. But sometimes I have the feeling that it's all about, I have to do this, and stress, and one more session, and then forgetting to eat the right stuff, or just recovery shake and then go on. But that the body don't really have the time to recover enough to adapt to the training stress you give him. And that is, for me, really, really important in professional athletes, but also in age group athletes. It's the same. Also, professional athletes, they really have to take care that they have enough time to recover. There is not so much room to do different stuff. I always tell to my athletes, okay, if I do training, the training plan, there is a little bit of room to do a little bit more, or to have a little bit something else, but not so much. So if you don't recover well, if you sleep bad, I don't know why, but if this is the case, then it will have a bad impact on your outcome. And then we have to adapt the training. It's not that we can just continue. Then if there was nothing, we have to adapt the training and to react on the needs of your body.
Fantastic stuff, mate. And that's a really great place to finish off. Just before we leave, what's the rest of the year look like for you then? There's a few races coming up on the calendar, you said, with the cycling. Do you think the Tour de France is going to take place? Have they said a definite yes or no yet? I think we're still looking at August 31st or September 1st or something. Is that right?
Yeah, at the moment they say that it takes place, and we really hope that it takes place, because if not, I think it will be perhaps the end of cycling, or at least for a lot of teams. But at the moment, it seems that it will take place starting at the end of August until the 20th of September. And I will now do some recons. Recons are, you go for some stages and look how the course is, and with your key riders. And then at the end of August, I will be at the Tour de France, hopefully. And then we will see if there are still some triathlon competitions that are coming up, and what will happen until the end of the year. I think at the moment we can't say nothing about it. I just hope also for the whole world that we come out of this in a good state, and that we can get back to normal as soon as possible. But I know that it's not so easy, and I respect also decisions when sport events are cancelled. But I just want to point out that also in sport there are working places, there are people who are engaged, who get their money from there. It's also a normal job, because sometimes you see, okay, the economy, they are losing their jobs, and sport is not so important. But I think the sport is also an economy for itself, and there also we have to try, if it's possible, to guarantee the people these jobs. I think that's if, for example, cycling is not existing anymore, you have a lot of teams. Every team have around, 100 people around. And then they also have to look for something new. For some, it's not such a big thing, but I think for other people, it's not easy, because they are coming from athletes and still being in sports and have never been in something else. And that's why I hope that we come good out of this.
No, well said, and I couldn't agree more. And I think we've all got to keep racking our heads on how we move forward. And even if it's not completely normal for a little while, we still got to try and come up with ways to find some way of keeping this all going. And I did see the other day, I think that there was an Austrian sprint triathlon championships or something on. I think Christian Blumenfeld went and won that. And so there are little events popping up. I know down here in Florida, they put on a little triathlon last week. There's a few things, you got to wear your face masks and things in transition. And, they've set them off in waves further apart and that kind of thing. But, and I'm all for that. I'm encouraging. I think, you want to see these little events. And like you said, the event managers, the coaches, the people all involved. There's a lot of people that rely on the sport industry for their income and their livelihood. So, like you, I'm all for figuring out how we can move forward and keeping these things alive, because I don't want to see cycling die off because we can't have a Tour de France or triathlon for that matter. I don't want to see it die off. And I think we've got to keep figuring out how we move forward. But Dan, mate, this has been such a privilege and just so much wealth of knowledge. Like I say to nearly every guest, I can't wait to make this where we can just sit on a couch in person and share a beer and just and talk and stop all this remoteness. I'm really looking forward to that. But thanks, mate, for coming on.
Thank you too, Greg. It was really nice to speak to you, and it would be a great pleasure to meet you in person, perhaps next year. Or if you want to come to the German mountains, you are invited. So,
oh mate, it sounds fantastic. I'll spend a week training with Sebastian Kinley and then have a week off with you, just drinking beer. How's that sound?
Perfect. That sounds great.
All right, mate. Well, thanks everybody for listening. And Dan, just stay on the line for a second, mate. Really appreciate it. And we'll chat soon.
Thanks a lot for listening to Be With Champions. If you enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Be With Champions Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.